Good morning, everybody. Welcome into the Sac City Podcast. I am your host, the one and only Vinny Milani, joined as always by your boy, the reigning and the defending, undisputed, somewhat heavyweight valedictorian of the show, AJ Johnson. Below us, we have my best friend in the whole entire world, Aaron, the Mukesiah Mukes. And below me, we have the smoothest voice in sports casting. He is Dylan Kearns. It is a beautiful June 22nd or June 23rd. No, wait, June 22nd morning here in the city. I'm still trying to get used to this new morning show life, but welcome in everybody to the Sac City Podcast. We are taking over your mornings with our great content and our beautiful faces, except for Dylan, who is looking like a lobster these days. Episode 44, we're continuing our fantasy talk. We're now breaking down division by division and team by team in their fantasy outlook for 2022, kicking off with the AFC North this evening. Aaron, how goes it in your new life?
Tired. Be honest, I'm tired. It's been a grind, man. It's been a grind, but it's always good to come here and do some Sac City stuff, kind of get me away from the big time industry and more focus on what we like to talk about, which is strictly football. But having a good time, just a little bit tired. They're keeping me busy at the station.
I find myself continuing just to say that our show is like higher than anything that I do in life. Like, even if it's like my real job, which is very high and I work on very professional things, I'm like, the Sac City content is just, it is number one. It is number one on the list. But we're the best. We're the best. We have our new time slot. We are taking over the mornings with our Good Morning Sac City. I want to remind everybody to please use that hashtag GMSC in the mornings when you're talking about Sac City and what you're seeing on the shows, whether you think Dylan says something stupid, which, well, he normally does say something stupid, or when, look, surprise, surprise, AJ leaves early on in the show because his internet has once again crapped out.
How is that even possible?
Even in the morning.
I'm sitting in an Airbnb in the middle of the hood. I don't even know if this place has internet, and yet mine's still connected.
Swear to God, we got into the studio about an hour before showtime, and he was perfectly fine from what I saw. And now once we go into live mode, once we go into this, it's all hell breaks loose. But while AJ is fixing his internet, let's get into our morning headlines. Yesterday, Rob Gronkowski announced he is retiring. The 4-time Super Bowl champ is retiring after 11 seasons in the NFL. Part of the NFL's 2010s All-Decade Team, 2014 Comeback Player of the Year, 5-time Pro Bowler. Gronk did it all in his career with the Bucs and the New England Patriots, winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl with Brady. Dylan, is Rob Gronkowski the greatest tight end of all time?
Oh, come on, man. Scroll. No, I just said the word. Wow. I said the word. No, I love Antonio Gates. I love, there's something about Antonio Gates during his career. I loved him and Phillip Rivers, and there were so many good tight ends. Tony Gonzalez, a beast. But when you talk about a legit red zone threat, a matchup nightmare, that's Rob Gronkowski. And this dude was an absolute beast, and he caught everybody's attention. Everybody wanted a piece of Gronk. Whether he was stiff-arming dudes, throwing them down, making great catches, getting into the end zone, winning Super Bowls, and just bringing that personality out on a daily basis. I still remember that Bills game when he threw that cornerback down and they had their little beef. That was nuts. But, Rob Gronkowski, to me, I don't think he's the best tight end of all time. So it's a no. No.
It's a no. Say it with your chest.
I apologize. I'm going to say no.
You're fine. It's just I'm going to go to you, Aaron, next on this thing, because you of all people, love calling this out. Whenever something recent happens, everyone gets loves and attached to whatever recency happens, and they think, okay, automatically I want to say that so-and-so is the best because he's so fresh on the brain. Is that the case here with Rob Gronkowski, or do you think he is actually the best tight end of all time?
No, of course he's not the best tight end of all time. He's one of the best. If you want to put him in that category of saying, hey, he's one of the best tight ends that we have seen in the NFL, sure. But to just label him the best tight end, I think that's going a bit too far. First of all, I don't even think this conversation is close. To me, it's Tony Gonzalez, and it's not really that close. You're talking about a guy who's had six first-team All-Pros. Gronk's had 4. Tony Gonzalez played a lifetime. Gronk's been injured throughout most of his career. The difference when we talk about best versus most accomplished. If you want to argue Rob Gronkowski's got more Super Bowls, sure, we can have that conversation. He also played with the greatest player we've ever seen play the game. So, yeah, there's been some of that with him. He's gotten Super Bowls sometimes when he hasn't even been playing. And he's been an impact to those Super Bowls. Don't get me wrong. But to say he's the best tight end we've ever seen, I don't know. I think, again, I'd have Tony Gonzalez up there. I'd have Antonio Gates up there. I mean, we could talk about guys that don't ever get talked about. We could talk about Kellen Winslow up there, not Junior, but listen, there's just other guys that we can talk about before we get to Gronk when we're talking about the best. Now, did he have the potential to be the best? I do believe that. And there's a guy that's knocking right on his door, and that's Travis Kelsey. And we talk about the numbers being put up. Let's make no mistake about it. The numbers between Travis Kelsey and Rob Gronkowski aren't going to be that close. Travis Kelsey will have better numbers in a shorter period of time because it is more of a passing league, because he's more of a focal point in that offense. And I could say the same about Gronk having numbers that maybe Tony Gonzalez didn't have because they weren't throwing the ball as much back then. So it's a conversation. He's in that group of great tight ends. But to be labeled the best, I think that's going too far.
Yeah. AJ, what was it like on Monday or Tuesday where Rob Gronkowski announces retirement? You were obviously in Tampa. He didn't have an insane, obviously he had a big impact in Tampa with obviously the Super Bowl. But what was Tampa like going through the announcement of the retirement?
Well, I don't have windows in my office, so I don't even know what outside looked like during the day. But the norm coming from everybody, this is kind of expected, to be honest. I mean, the amount of time he took to announce the fact that he wasn't coming back was kind of the feel in the air that he wasn't, to be honest. Now, I don't know how much truth you want to put to if Brady comes calling halfway through the season, he might come back and play. I mean, they said that the last time just to keep you hanging on by a string, but I kind of had the feeling in the offseason that he wasn't going to make it back. And we're thankful. Tampa's thankful. He got him a ring of recent memory, and he'll go down as a very likable and favorite Buck. Can't say greatest of all time or one of the real greats because you were there a season and a half, in all honesty, if you want to talk injury and so on and so forth. But I really felt like you could see this coming, though.
AJ, was that a Microsoft joke?
I'm sorry?
Windows in your office?
Shut up, Dylan. No, we're passing through this. We're gonna pass through this because
can I point out, and I really don't want this to be like hate on Gronk because he's a great tight end. I'm glad he had a great career and he's leaving the game. That sucks. But just to kind of put it into context, Gronk's only had 2 seasons with 80 or more catches. 2 of his entire career. Guys like Tony Gonzalez has done it 9-10 times. Like he's been a red zone threat. He's been effective in big games, and he's been a go-to target for Tom Brady. But we have got to be careful when we start just labeling the guy the greatest ever, just because he's playing now or was playing.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. We talked about this the other day, and I am ashamed of myself for doing this right off the jump. We talked about this the other day when we're talking about players and where they rank overall and how good their careers were. And in this case, Rob Gronkowski retiring. And instead of talking about the great career Rob Gronkowski had, we're comparing him to others. We're trying to rank him versus others. And instead it ends up coming into being a conversation of where Rob Gronkowski wasn't good enough. But the man, 5-time Pro Bowler, 4-time Super Bowl champ, all-decade team. He is a special tight end. And if he's actually hanging it up, which, AJ, you brought up maybe if Brady comes calling back to Gronk in the middle of the season, if he comes back or not, I honestly could see that happening, and I'm putting that like more of a 70-30 chance. I don't know about you guys, but that's a 70-30 chance that if Brady comes calling in week 8 and saying, we want you back.
It could be about not wanting to make the decision right now and letting them focus on what they're doing instead of wondering if he's coming back and not wanting to just commit today. Who knows? Maybe it's week 8 and 9 and he's like, all right, my body's right. I don't think so. I do think this is it. But like you, like, I get it. Like, if he was to take the field again, I wouldn't go, oh my God, the world's crazy. Like, I didn't, you know what I mean? So I think that's like that. If that would be a part of it, but I don't know, man. I think he really enjoyed his retirement time when it got that feel for his body being straight, not having to go out and get tackled and hurt week in and week out. Let's not forget, this man was just riddled with injuries throughout his career. Like, his body at this point, he's a big dude, getting older. His body might be talking to him and he might be listening.
This is it, and here's why. The guy was a free agent. Why announce retirement? Just hold out till the end, right? That's the thing when I look at this. I mean, the last time he had to retire because he was still under contract with the Pats. He was either going to be back or not. Right now, the dude's a free agent. So, I mean, he could have held out till week 8. He could have just signed a contract then. He could have waited. So now that he announced his retirement, I think it is official.
Okay. Well, either way, after 11 seasons, Gronk is retired right now, and it was a hell of a career. Hall of Famer. No one's going to argue that. He is a Hall of Fame tight end, hell of a career. And we wish you the best, Gronk, and we can't wait to see what you do in your new life entertaining the masses, because whatever he's going to get into, it's going to be entertaining. We're about to go into our AFC North fantasy breakdown, but first, AJ, please load up those golden pipes and tell our morning viewers where they can follow us.
Good morning, Sac City. We are so happy y'all are with your boys on the Sac City Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit up every single one of those wonderful platforms and make sure to hit that like, that follow, that share. And of course, as always, tell somebody about the new morning show taking over your airwaves, the best football content on the interwebs at Sac City Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Your boys are back in town. Sac City Pod, baby.
And if you're listening to us on a podcasting platform, please be sure to write us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please drop it in the comments how much you love this new morning show. Good morning, Sac City. My wife is going to kill me because she's asleep and she's going to end up waking up to that. Oof, lots of learning things here. But let's get into our AFC North fantasy outlooks here, and let's get into position here. We're going to go through some positions here within the AFC North and determine really their fantasy, their value as a whole. I want to start off with the quarterback position, though, and we've talked about it. And Dylan, you even brought this up, or maybe it was AJ in our pre-show. We've talked about this quarterback position within the AFC North so many times, whether it be Joe Burrow, whether it be Lamar Jackson, whether it be Deshaun Watson, and where these guys all rank, but we've never really talked about it from a fantasy perspective. So Aaron, I want to kick things off with you here. Who is the best fantasy quarterback in the AFC North? Last year we saw Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, although Lamar Jackson got hurt, both averaged around 20 points, fantasy points per game. So who actually is the best fantasy quarterback in the AFC North?
All things equal, I think the answer is Deshaun Watson. And I think that answer is only predicated on, obviously, if he's on the field, which I don't think any of us anticipate he's on the field for 2022, at least for an entire season, which is going to make his draft value go down. So all things equal, I would say Deshaun Watson. But for me, between Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson is really what we're talking about here. And then both of them are probably being drafted around the same position, top 7, top 8 at the quarterback position. I lean towards Lamar Jackson, and I think this is because of one thing. It's the rushing value. having a quarterback who has the ability to run gives you the upside of a number one overall fantasy player. And Joe Burrow, I'm sorry, as good as he's been, Joe Burrow will never be the number one fantasy player in football. Josh Allen's, the Patrick Mahomes, those guys always end up doing that. Lamar Jackson, we've already seen do that. He was the number one player a few years ago. He's been in the top 10 2 of the last 3 years. He even finished number 15 last year, and he did not even play an entire season, and it was considered a down year. I think Lamar Jackson is the answer to that question, and I don't want to say it's not close, but I think the floor for Lamar Jackson is so high because of the rushing value that he just is going to supersede anything Joe Burrow can do consistently.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing we talk about all the time within fantasy. It's almost like a simple concept at this point, with the fact that if you are a mobile quarterback, you are way ahead of any quarterback that does not have that type of mobility. And it's not to say Joe Burrow is not mobile. He can get out, he can run, he can scramble, he can do that kind of stuff. But in terms of a fantasy impact, it's almost strictly his passing and strictly his touchdowns that he's going to get with throwing to guys like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, whereas Lamar Jackson has it all. He's got the yards, he can throw, he can run, and it's just game-changing when it comes to fantasy. You look at the ceilings of the two, and you could honestly say that Joe Burrow, I don't know if that ceiling is a number one quarterback, but for Lamar Jackson, you know that if you're getting Lamar Jackson at his best in fantasy, you arguably could have the best quarterback in fantasy football. AJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Joe Burrow is going to have one of those Patrick Mahomes 50 touchdown type seasons to see that type of quarterback relevancy when it comes to top QB in fantasy. I mean, you're talking like he'd have to be one of those knocking on the door, breaking the QB record of fantasy points for us to look at him that way. Otherwise, you're still getting a great product. Don't get me wrong. You enjoy having Joe Burrow on your team. You're happy to get him. You're definitely going to use him as a starter. He's got weapons all over the place. He will be fantasy relevant. But I think you're looking somewhere around 350, 360, which is a great season. When you're looking at Lamar Jackson, fully healthy and with his weapons around him, you're talking about knocking on the door at 400 season in and season out again because of that rushing capability. So Joe Burrow is going to be a guy that we're talking about as being the best QB in the AFC North, whether it's fantasy or regular football for seasons to come. But I don't think we should jump and react to his last season and just anoint him all of a sudden.
Do you guys fear the weapons that he has this year? Losing Marquise?
Who? I don't feel anybody even thought Baltimore had weapons with Marquise Brown.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, don't get me wrong. He's gotten better every season. And I think Hollywood Brown has been given kind of a bad rap because he didn't show out right away. But he's actually produced pretty well the last couple of seasons. I think Mark Andrews, I think the running game, I don't think Lamar is ever going to be the quarterback that's going to throw for 4,000 yards and 5,000 yards. It's not. But he'll throw for 3,500 and a lot of touchdowns, and he'll run, right? Because he's already thrown 39 touchdowns in a season where he didn't throw for a lot of yards. They score a lot because of their style of offense, and he gets a lot of them on the ground, and then tight ends, you're in the red zone and out of the backfield. I don't think that impacts Lamar Jackson like it would another quarterback. Joe Burrow is a top, let's not make no mistake about it, he's still a top 7 to 10 quarterback in fantasy. And you're still getting him as a starter, to AJ's point. And then Deshaun Watson's a top 10 quarterback in fantasy as well. Arguably 3 top 10 quarterbacks we're talking about here. So if you said, hey, maybe I'm going to pass where Lamar is being drafted and then take a Joe Burrow, I could see that and be okay with that if there's a difference in the draft value. But if there's not, I'm going to take Lamar Jackson. But it's also risk versus reward.
As of right now, the ADP for Lamar Jackson, you're looking at the end of round 4, and the ADP for Joe Burrow is the middle of round 5. So it isn't that big of a difference as of right now. So between the two
really
quarterbacks.
What you're juggling there is risk versus reward, because I think there's a much higher risk, especially this year with Lamar Jackson, than there is with Joe Burrow. Cincinnati addressed the offensive line. The offensive line should be improved. He's a year removed from an ACL injury. So that part of his game should be better. And plus, he doesn't run as much as Lamar Jackson, who's obviously going to be at risk whenever he's running for injury. So, and we saw the injuries last year. So the risk versus reward, maybe you lean Joe Burrow there if you want to play it safe, but just understand by taking Joe Burrow, you're probably not going to get a guy that has the potential to be that number 1 fantasy option like a Lamar Jackson has.
Let's go to our next positional breakdown here, and it's the running back position. You got guys like Nick Chubb. You got J.K. Dobbins returning from injury. You have Najee Harris. There's a lot of good running backs in the AFC North. Dylan, how would you rank the top 4, maybe 5 if you want to throw in a backup or two in there? How would you rank the running backs in the AFC North?
I'd go Joe Mixon at number 1. I'd go Nick Chubb at 2, Najee Harris at 3, Kareem Hunt, J.K. Dobbins.
Ooh, see, that's where I wanted to. This is where, and I remember talking to Aaron on the car ride back into Jacksonville, talking about the running backs and what we're going to do with this. And I was like, you know who I want to go with to right away on this question was Dylan, to hear his rankings. Because not to say you're wrong, Dylan, because you're not. It's just an opinion.
I always have different thoughts.
But Kareem Hunt over J.K. Dobbins, a starter over a backup, and maybe you don't want to consider Kareem Hunt just any other backup, but you have him over him. Why Kareem Hunt over J.K. Dobbins?
J.K. Dobbins coming off of injury, and that's not the only reason I'm looking at here, right? I know J.K. Dobbins is in a good offense. Gus Edwards is coming back in that offense. So we just talked about him being a potential steal at his ADP. That offense runs a lot, and I'm not saying J.K. Dobbins is bad. Kareem Hunt's shown. You're talking best running backs, and Kareem Hunt, he's receiving out of the backfield, still being fantasy relevant. Nick Chubb has missed a few games. Kareem Hunt stepped up and played well in those games that he's missed. I mean, Kareem Hunt's a starting running back. I don't think there's any slouch on J.K. Dobbins here. It's just he's coming off an ACL in a loaded backfield that has a lot of guys in an offense that likes to run, which could be beneficial to him. I think he could have a good year this year. I think from a talent perspective, I like Kareem Hunt more.
The reason it's beneficial for J.K. Dobbins, and you kind of mentioned it with your question, you don't feel they really have any weapons for Lamar Jackson on the outside. They got a lot of tight ends. We talked about the fact that they want to get back to what they're good at, and that's running the football. There's going to be touches to be had by J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards when they both come back. And the fact of the matter is they are both still nursing that injury, and John Harbaugh has already said he's not sure which one's coming back first and how ready they're going to be. So, but once they get in there, he plans on running these guys. And J.K. Dobbins is ready to step back up and reclaim his role if he can. So I think between him and Gus Edwards and Lamar Jackson, I know you always have a worry that if anyone else touches the ball, your player is no longer valuable, but that's just not true. So I think these guys are going to have a decent amount of touches. And it's hard to say, that you're wrong when you're thinking about it that way, because now you're talking about a Kareem Hunt who's going to split touches and a J.K. Dobbins who's going to split touches. So I guess you're having your preference. I can't call it either way, to be honest.
I know someone who will.
I'm surprised that we're discussing the lower end of this scale, right? Which is the 4 and the 5 guy, because I think it's clear we all think it's Mixon, Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, in whatever order you want to put them in. I agree with Dylan. I do think it's Joe Mixon first. The way they used him last year, the lack of competition behind him, the talks about Pittsburgh reducing Najee Harris's role a little bit because he touched the ball way too much last year, that he's not going to last if they continue to do that. I think that all plays into it. But the interesting thing about J.K. Dobbins and Kareem Hunt is, Dylan, you love Kareem Hunt. Like you love Kareem Hunt. And I think AJ likes Kareem Hunt too a lot, just because he talked about being able to draft them both. But Kareem Hunt has not been the healthy back. Like, you get on here and you bash Dalvin Cook for missing games, and then you're willing to take a Kareem Hunt in the 4th and 5th round. Kareem Hunt has missed 8 games last year. He played the full 16 before that when he actually ranked 10th in RB, but he missed 8 games before the year before that. He missed 5 games the year before that. He's only played 2 entire full seasons. One was his rookie year, and one was the year before last. I don't know that I trust Kareem Hunt as much as many people do. I think that he's kind of overhyped. Not in the skills department, but his ability to stay on the field, his ability to produce as a consistent fantasy running back, as a backup to Nick Chubb. I think that's an issue. I never like guys that you might have to pick and choose what games he goes off. And for me, that's a Kareem Hunt style running back right now. At 2 of the last 3 years, he's finished outside the running back 45. No, thank you. So at their current ADPs, I would much rather have J.K. Dobbins, even though I know he's getting running back by committee, probably because he's coming off the injury. I'm a lot more comfortable going to an offense that I know is going to run the football consistently. I don't know if Deshaun Watson comes back that they're going to be a run-first football team anymore. They might be a pass-first football team. I am comfortable with saying if Baltimore is on the field, or if J.K. Dobbins is on the field for Baltimore, he's going to get enough touches. And it's as simple as that. I think they like him in the red zone. I think he's going to be the only running back that works in the passing game. And the fact is they really do like him. 134 carries 2 years ago, and he was productive with those 134 carries.
You don't think a passing offense in Cleveland would help Kareem Hunt in that?
Nope. Deshaun Watson never
pushes the ball down the field. Deshaun Watson is the push the ball down the field type of quarterback.
He never
Kareem Hunt, don't get me wrong. He's going to get his catches, but he's getting his catches
smart
with Baker Mayfield. It's not. It's just about scheme and design, right? The design for a Deshaun Watson is to push the ball down the field. That's what Deshaun Watson wants to do, because a lot of times when you're checking down to your running backs, it's because you can't escape pressure, which Deshaun Watson can do. And he's one of the more athletic quarterbacks in the league, and he'll end up getting rush yards and things like that. I think Kareem Hunt is valuable, but I think he's overdrafted in a lot of places. And when you're comparing him to a guy like J.K. Dobbins, I think I'm safer with J.K. Dobbins than I am a Kareem Hunt. And I don't know where they're being drafted at this point. So again, draft ADP does matter. But I much rather have a J.K. Dobbins and say fifth round.
He's going at pick 39, so that would be what, the third round? That would be
that's pretty high.
Fourth round.
So that's pretty high for a J.K. Dobbins right now. That's extremely high.
Yeah, he's going as the in redraft. He's going in PPR. He's going as the RB. J.K. Dobbins is going as the RB 21. Kareem Hunt is going as the RB 30. We did say that. So that's 30. He's going 39th, and Kareem Hunt's going 77th. My quick math is not going to work right now, so I'm just going to give you those numbers and take it as you will.
8th round.
Yeah, it's early in the morning.
Yeah, there you go.
The fact of the matter is that's not great value for J.K. Dobbins. And I think people are assuming he's coming back from an ACL injury 100% healthy. But even if he comes back, AJ said they're going to give him a run. I don't know how many touches J.K. Dobbins get or Gus Edwards gets. They're both coming off significant knee injuries. I would imagine they're going to be more of a 50-50 split than anything, especially to start the year. Now, maybe as the season goes on, it picks up a little bit. But to return that value that you're drafting J.K. Dobbins in the 3rd round, I think that's a bit of a stretch.
That's too high to me, in my opinion. Even at the front end of the 4th round, like I was thinking, like you would have had me thinking about it in the 5th round. I'd be reaching and jumping up for joy in the 6th. But late 3rd, early 4th is kind of early. And from what I can remember, this Harbaugh, I mean, he'll tell you like it is for the most part, if I recall correctly. I could be completely wrong about that, but they don't expect them to come back from the season ready to go. It is going to be as the season wanes on. So you're already talking about Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins potentially missing time. So
Tyler Beatty.
That's part of the reason they drafted him. That's part of the reason they brought in Mike Davis. They know that they're going to have to rotate this, even when these guys don't get back. They did it. It doesn't matter how you feel. They did it.
Stick.
Hey, so did Atlanta.
Yeah, so did I say
Carolina?
Never again. Never again. Never again will I get fooled by the Mike Davis train. He produced in Carolina when McCaffrey was out. They give him a contract in Atlanta, and he absolutely was overdrafted in every fantasy league last year, and he absolutely shit the bed. Never again will I buy the Mike Davis hype.
And Mike Davis, right after being productive in Seattle, took his happy ass to Chicago and just got absolutely destroyed and cut halfway through the year because David Montgomery was that dude.
Mike Davis is this year's James Conner, and if you missed our shows last year, we avoided James Conner. We were wrong. We were very wrong about that. But I don't think we're going to be wrong this year about Mike Davis. So, but if you, and we talked about this player a little bit, Gus Edwards, we have a YouTube video out there right now floating around about Gus Edwards and how much we value him at his ADP spot. So if you missed that, check it out on our YouTube page at Sac City Pod. We are going to now get into our AFC North team by team breakdown, kicking it off with the AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals. And Aaron, start you off with this one here, buddy. Who has the better ADP value, Jamar Chase or T. Higgins?
Oh, What's the ADP?
Yeah.
You're not even going to give me the number?
Come on, kid.
What kind of producer
ADP
is this?
I mean, I figured you did your research. You literally, I already know all my shit. They're 80.
I mean, you're asking me the
wide
questions.
receiver. Jamar Chase is the wide receiver 3 going in the first round, and T. Higgins is going in the third round at the wide receiver 12 at pick 33.
Oh man. Wide receiver 12?
Yep.
You know what? Like this might surprise a lot of people. Because I was on the hey, slow down on Jamar Chase bandwagon, but I think it's Jamar Chase. And the reason I say that is because I do think T. Higgins' upside is capped a bit by the want to get Jamar Chase the football, the electric ability to make big plays. There might be more games where T. Higgins is consistent, 6 catches, 80 yards, 7 catches, 85 yards. But those games where Jamar Chase goes, 15 catches or whatever, 6 catches, 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, it's going to be too many. And I think that Jamar Chase at 3 is going to give you that. It might be frustrating at times. It's going to be the Mike Evans every once in a while where he has a game, 2 catches for 15 yards and you're like, what happened? But overall, I think over the course of a season, I think Jamar Chase at the wide receiver 3 position is just much better value than what you're going to get from T. Higgins. After 2 good seasons, I equate T. Higgins very much to like Terry McLaurin. I think his upside is capped, but he's pretty consistent. But when you look at the end of the season, you're like, he finished wide receiver 24. Like, it's not great, but you feel like he had a great year. And I think his name value is more trade worthy than what you're actually going to get in return. So if you have T. Higgins, think about maybe moving off of him if you can get some good players. It's just my opinion.
I love that take, Aaron. I really do. I think Jamar Chase, the guy's the early first rounder. With what you guys laughing at?
The way you said it.
I love that take, Aaron. I really do. That's a great take, man. I love that take.
It really was. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you can't get screwed with Chase. I know he's a first round pick, right? That's the one you want off the board. That's your wide receiver. You take him. Sure, he's going to have a few bad weeks, but I mean, the guy is legit a number 1 wide receiver on your team. Your first overall pick, first round pick. He's not going to screw you. You take Higgins in the 3rd. It's a little spicy, little caliente for me. But I think he's got to fall down a little bit. I think you could get screwed with Higgins. You can't get screwed with Chase.
I agree. He's a big play machine, and I don't think Aaron, I think you brought it up. There are times where you might be a little frustrated with Jamar Chase, but his talent and his ceiling, you're going to more than likely get that return on that investment. Although he is going ahead of guys like Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill. Are you okay with
that's
that,
wrong.
Aaron?
No, that is wrong. That's blasphemy. Jamar Chase is great. And the wide receiver 3 is too high for me. I'm not saying that I would take him there, but the value for there versus what T. Higgins is okay to me. But when you're drafting a guy like that over Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, I don't agree with that. Remember, he finished as I believe wide receiver 5 last year. And a lot of that was the one game against Kansas City, 12 catches, 200-something yards, 3 touchdowns. That put him from probably wide receiver 11, wide receiver 9, 10, 11, all the way up to wide receiver 5. So, again, the big games are going to be there. But if you're looking for somebody that's consistently great and then also can give you big games, that's Stephon Diggs usually. That's Devontae Adams. I'm not taking my chances just yet in drafting Jamar Chase over those guys. But if you had to ask me again, value-wise, is it Higgins in the 3rd or is it Chase in the 1st? I'm probably taking Chase.
Guys, I want to bring up a point here about Jamar Chase. Now, don't compare football players, okay? We're comparing fantasy football players here. So don't say, oh, you're an idiot, you're stupid, you're terrible.
Well,
Jamar Chase, you know who he reminds me of, at least through 1 year. Fantasy-wise, he's like Tyreek Hill, and he's like Calvin Johnson, where he'll give you that big game, and he'll have a few thumpers. He'll get a 7. He'll like in a PPR format, but that's the kind of fantasy player you're getting here. He's gonna put up those monster games that win you weeks just out of the blue, and I think that's how his career is gonna end up as a fantasy football player.
Yeah, he's not a high volume guy. That's really what it boils down to. I think he only had like 3 or 4 games where he had 7 catches, and that's a lot of catches, but there are just guys that do that more often. He's a 3 catch, 4 catch, 5 catch guy that produces big yardage because he has big plays and then explodes for touchdowns in games. And I don't want to take anything away from him. That's the kind of player that can explode on a fantasy week and help you win. But if you're looking for that consistent Cooper Kupp type numbers, 8 or 9 catches, and then maybe he gets a touchdown, now it's elite, you're probably not going to get that with Chase. So that's why I don't have him in my top 3 at the wide receiver position. But if you take him in the first round, I'm not mad at you.
Last question on the Cincinnati Bengals. AJ, this is to you. How will the offensive line improvements affect the fantasy stock of players like Joe Mixon and Joe Burrow this season? Obviously, we saw them reload that offensive line. It was a big problem last season. This coming season might not be the same problem. How does it affect Burrow and Mixon?
I mean, I know a lot of people are going to enjoy the Mixon train a lot more this season as well, and you were very happy with them last year. I mean, they ran the ball about 45% of the time last season, and Joe Mixon was still able to be productive enough with it. Only 3 games over 100 yards. I think that's going to happen at least another 3 times this season. With that offensive line, that push that they're getting some pros up there. I think that Mixon is going to have another breakout year. I think you can look at him in that 1,300 yard area, maybe even more in a pace to do that. So with Joe Burrow, I mean, I wasn't able to look at the numbers and everything, but just think about the amount of games he had where he was sacked 9 times or something of that nature. And imagine if he could get that pass off even 6 of those times. You know, you're adding a substantial amount of potential points from there. So this line is obviously going to help the offense. That's a non-starter.
I think with this offensive line, like we talked about Joe Burrow earlier on in the show about comparing him to Lamar Jackson, not necessarily comparing him, but seeing which fantasy value, which player is going to be better in fantasy. And I do think that offensive line is going to help out immensely when it comes to Joe Burrow. Like you said, AJ, getting off those passes a little bit sooner. Aaron, you're kind of smirking over there. What are you thinking over there?
I think we're mixing football and fantasy. I don't think it's going to change either one of their fantasy output. Like, I don't think Joe Burrow was quarterback 7 last year. I mean, Joe Mixon was the top back last year. I don't think that changes. On the field, it's going to look better, right? There's going to be more time for Joe Burrow to throw. But I think in the end, when you look at the end of the season, you're not saying, oh, my goodness, man, the offensive line helped him so much that Mixon went from running back 4 or running back 5 or 6 to running back 2, or Joe Burrow went from quarterback 7 to quarterback 2. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. So yes, it'll look cleaner. They'll be protected. There might be a little bit more holes, but I think in the end, where they're drafted, where they finish, they're going to end up being very similar to what they were last year, because they both had really good years last year.
Yeah.
Maybe Joe Burrow moves up a spot or 2. Like I can see Joe Burrow getting into quarterback 5 or 6. I'm trying to think off my head.
See Joe Mixon being a top 2 running back this season?
Top 2? No way.
No
way.
2? Boy, you lost your mind because I'll help you find it.
I mean, they have him on pace for 1,600 yards and 12 touchdowns as of right now.
Who's they?
That's what they're projecting.
Who the hell is they? Who the hell is they?
Who they say gonna beat them Bengals?
I would go with media pundits. Those are articles and paces that I'm seeing. I've seen that on Sports Illustrated. I've seen that.
The man had his best year last year, and I'm a Joe Mixon. I love Joe Mixon. Mm-hmm. Man had his best year and had 1,200 yards, and they going now all of a sudden jump him up 400 more and say it's 1,600 yards. That's a stretch.
It is a stretch. It's a pace.
It's
got to adjust over and over again for sure.
He's going into his 6th year in the league. He's had over 1,000 carries on his body. I don't think Joe Mixon is going to all of a sudden have some breakout 1,800 yard season. Number one, I think they're going to rely too much on the arm of Joe Burrow to even give him that many carries. 292 last year, averaged 4 yards a carry, and ran for 1,200 yards. Was he going to average 6 yards a carry this year? I mean, I don't know what more you want from him that's going to put him in the top 2 when you got guys like Jonathan Taylor who get the ball 1,000 times, when you get guys like Christian McCaffrey come back healthy, Najee Harris who touches the ball a lot, Austin Eckler who's a dual threat extraordinaire. Like those guys to me, Alvin Kamara are guys that can finish top 2, 3, 4, and 5. Like Joe Mixon at his best is going to get up into the top 3, 4, 5. And that even then that's a stretch for me. So he'll have a good year. No doubt about it. But I mean, he's being drafted as running back 7, I believe, right now. There's a reason.
And what did he finish as last year?
I
thought you had it. Okay. I thought you saw it.
No. I didn't look.
Sure.
I have what?
Sure,
Last
obviously.
year, Joe Mixon
And we're
finished
talking about an
running back
improvement,
6.
so clearly.
Running back
he was
6,
probably-
Joe Mixon.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, he could get to the top 5. I wouldn't knock the top 5. But again, for him to have an offensive line that's now fixed to then jump from 6 all the way to 2 or 1, I just don't see that happening. Not saying don't draft him, because I would definitely draft him at his current ADP. I think that's a perfectly good spot for him.
Number 2 is
I like
just
Joe-
asinine.
Yeah,
It's not asinine.
that
It is.
I do
asinine.
remember there were some people on this panel last year when I was talking about Joe Mixon that were like, well,
Sorry,
you got to show me.
the reason why I kept going like because I wanted to correct myself because I knew that this was a wrong stat. Joe Mixon finishes the RB4 in PPR leagues.
I
last
thought it
year
was 5.
as the RB4.
Yeah, 4.
So that
Checks
I didn't
out.
want to. I don't want to be wrong about
And-
these things. I don't want to look like an asshole, which normally I do, but I digress. Let's move on to the next team on our list. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers here. And Dylan, we had a conversation to start the show about the running backs, and you were making just one of your stupid faces. We're talking about Najee Harris and his workload. What? See, there it is. That's the face. That's the face right there. It's just the face. What is it? What are your thoughts on Najee Harris? Because now there's reports coming out of camp, out of mini.
Can we
You
stop?
are just the worst.
Can we stop with this reports about a lessening a workload for Mr. Najee? Can we stop
he
with that
said it-
shit?
He did say it himself.
I don't care who says it. Mike Tomlin does not give a damn about no running back by committee, lessening no workload. He doesn't give a shit. This dude had D'Angelo Williams behind Le'Veon Bell, and he still, when Williams was kicking ass, when Bell was coming off his suspension, said, all right, next, boom, Bell gets 30 carries. James Conner, go be that horse. He goes down, well, shit, now we're screwed. He is not a guy that mixes running backs very often. He's a bell cow type of guy. He has his bell cow back. That's why they drafted him in the first round. I'm not buying it. Mike Tomlin has never been a head coach that goes to different running backs throughout the course of the game. Maybe you'll see a Samuels from time to time on third down. That's what they did a few times. But all I'm saying is this is a 3-down back. It's a workhorse. That's why you drafted him. And that's my take here. I think Najee Harris will not get a lessened workload.
Okay, first of all, you need to stop.
Stop what?
You need to stop.
Stop
Nobody
what?
said that. Nobody mentioned Najee Harris not being a 3-down back. And just because you're a 3-down back doesn't mean you can't have your workload lessened. We've seen this from guys like Ezekiel Elliott. 2 years into his career.
Yeah, he's very, very down now.
Stop. Listen, 2 years into his career, what did they start doing? They started running a 2 series with Zeke, a series with Pollard. 2 series with Zeke, a series with Pollard. Saying that you're going to lessen a workload does not mean that he's not going to get touches. Najee Harris touched the ball almost 400 times last year. Unsustainable in the NFL. It's not going to happen. So if you think Najee Harris is going to get 400 touches again, you're crazy. Now he might be more efficient this year.
You want to go deeper on the fact that guys with 370 plus touches don't last? Over the past decade, these running backs had over 370 plus touches, and that is not a good number of injuries right there. Derrick Henry, the most recent one, Christian McCaffrey, David Johnson, Lev Bell, who you were talking about, Arian Foster. These guys are getting injured after carrying that much workload into the following season. So if Pittsburgh's smart enough, they won't be running Najee Harris that much.
They're not. The fact of the matter, they're not. He's not touching the ball 400 times 2 years in a row. You brought up the list there, which you should have did. I mean, not what you should have did, or Vinny, but the two guys that were healthy, Zeke and I believe DeMarco Murray on that list. How many touches did they get the following year?
Well, it was
did they get almost 400?
That was the other thing I was going to mention as well, and I just wasn't sure. They're like it's one thing to say that you're going to regress, because obviously if you have that much workload, you're gonna regress. It is not sustainable. But when you look back at that list, the players there, Zeke was the only one to be able to have a campaign from 2018 to 2019 where he didn't actually regress, but all those other players the following year regressed massively, whether it was 1,000 going from 1,500 yards to 7. DeMarco Murray went from 1,500 yards to 700 yards. Adrian Peterson is the only guy that didn't have like a massive regression, because that was the year he went for 2,000 yards and then he went to 1,200 yards. So when you are giving a running back that many touches, it does not favor you the following year, whether it be injury or a massive drop off. What are you shaking your head at? What are you shaking your head?
You're wrong.
I see two Steelers on that list. Why'd they do it twice?
They didn't do it twice. That's the point. The list there says they did get 400 carries. The following year they got hurt. That's what that list says. They couldn't do it 2 years in a row. That's why your point is debunked.
Oh,
there is no way Najee Harris is touching the ball almost 400
Bell
times.
got over 400 times, multiple times in Pittsburgh.
That's twice. Not what we're talking about.
Why? It's a Mike Tomlin back. That's my point. That was my driving force. Is Tomlin doesn't give a shit.
No. Your driving force was, why can't he do it again? First of all, Le'Veon Bell had 1 year over 300 carries. 1 year.
In that
2017. No,
that's touches. That's touches.
You're not listening, Dylan. Touches are different than carries. And even when you bring up Le'Veon Bell's numbers, in 2017, he had 321 carries, 85 catches. That was the only year he was at 400.
We're talking about him not being efficient. We're talking about his workload being lessened. I'm not.
What I'm saying is that's the only time Le'Veon Bell went almost 400 carries or touches. He never did it again. So you're saying Najee Harris is going to do it back-to-back years, which no running back has done. None. Including Ezekiel Elliott, who's on that list. He didn't touch it 400 times. That's the point. Is we're saying the workload is going to be lessened no matter what you say, because no player sustains that type of workload, especially at the running back position. Now, if you want to argue he's still going to get work, yes. Is he going to be a 3-down back? Yes. Is he going to get a lot of touches? Yes. Is he going to get almost 400? No. He also doesn't have dink and dunk Ben Roethlisberger back there with no arm to throw the ball to, where he's just going to dump it off every play.
So for fantasy purposes, going into the Najee Harris and the potential lessen workload for him, we're basically, from what I get at here from the panel here, is that it won't matter for fantasy. Najee Harris is still going to be a very valuable back, whether he has that massive workload that he had last year or whether he has just 300 touches this year. We're not concerned about Najee Harris, right? As a fan from fantasy only.
I'm more excited.
Correct.
I'm
more excited than what?
The guy.
More excited than what for what?
Than last year for Najee Harris.
You think with the less touches, he's going to be more effective, and it's going to be a better year.
You lost your damn mind, because I'm not saying that. I think
I'm trying to figure out why, because you're like, oh, I'm more excited about it, but then why the hell are you more excited about it if you don't think he's going to have a better season? What are you excited for with Najee Harris then, Dylan?
I'm more excited because he's going to have a better year.
That's what I just said.
You said, are you still drafting him? Are you still excited about it? I said, I'm more excited about him.
Wait, you think he's going to have a better year than he had last year?
Absolutely.
At the same,
why are you guys making those faces?
Because you just got done saying how he's
Najee Harris finished, I believe, as the RB3 last year.
Yeah,
he's going to have a better year than he had last year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right.
I do believe I don't believe you had Najee Harris in your top 5 in your running backs or your
No, he
fantasy
didn't.
finishers, Dylan.
I think
Where were the top?
I did. He was
In his
five
top
or
10
six.
list. Wait. In his top
I'm
10
pulling
list,
it
was
up.
he
Hold
in the
on.
top 5? Because if
I
he
think
wasn't
he
in the
was
top
at
5,
three.
you should be
Three.
slapped.
Dylan's top 10, Najee Harris was number 5. So
See?
that is not a better year.
Yeah, how is that a better year?
Can't be wrong. Someone's wrong every once in a while. Not all those guys are staying healthy.
No. You ranked him as 5, and then you say now that he's going to have a better year than he had last year when nothing's happened yet. So how is that even possible?
I think
Or
he
are
has
you
a
just
better
making
year.
shit up?
I'm not making shit up.
CMC, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris is your top 5. Either way,
Yeesh. I don't like it.
either
now.
way,
But he was running back 3 last year. He was RB3 last year. Like, how do you say all of a sudden that he's just going to have a better year? It doesn't even make sense. No, you don't say that about top 5 running backs. Like, it's hard to do.
You refrain from those words.
Let me switch this question up here, and I know I'm going to go to Aaron next on this quarterback talk and Deontay Johnson. But AJ, I posed the question to you about in the Bengals about their offensive line improvements affecting Joe Burrow or Joe Mixon. Does offensive line help Najee Harris this year at all? We talked about last year how bad it was.
I mean, we've proven he can do it with or without. I mean, back from his days in Alabama, to an extent. I mean, anytime you have an improved offensive line, I'm not saying they didn't have a good line, but we spoke about the way he ran without block and how he gets out of things, gets out of tight spots and whatnot. But I mean, it goes without saying, anytime you have an improved offensive line, you're due to run a little bit better. I think it's more on the quarterback play that's going to come into account here. Like you said, you don't have the dink and dunk, but do you have the wherewithal of the quarterback of a Mitch Trubisky, or if Kenny Pickett ever gets in there, that they are going to check down and look for Najee as their blanket over and over again? And maybe his workload becomes lessened in the run game, but it's raised in the passing game because of the fact that these quarterbacks may be looking to check him down to save themselves time and time again. And I know he had a lot of catches last year, if I'm not mistaken, but I mean, I can see the same thing happen again. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was huge.
And he's proven his due, though. So, like, I could also see it being schemed up where he's in the 80 catch, 85 catch range as well. That's tough to do. Don't get me wrong. I know it's an astronomical number, but he can do it. He can do it. You're talking about 9 more catches.
He had a career. He had an amazing year last year. Him getting 74 catches was like mind blowing to most people. And now you're saying it's only like 9 more catches. Well, yeah, he already was breaking history and shit as a rookie with 74.
As a rookie, now he's a better player.
No, it's not about the player. It's the design of the offense and the lack of quarterback play that they had last year in offensive line. So the quarterback didn't have a chance to set and throw anything down the field, which means it was like drop back, dump it off to Najee, drop back, dump it off to Najee because I'm dying here. The offensive line play will improve his efficiency as a runner, but it will also improve the fact that they have more time, which will allow them to push the ball down the field more, which will eliminate some of his targets, some of his catches.
So, Aaron, what is
Mitch
this?
Trubisky back there now.
What is this? We're talking about quarterbacks here, Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett this season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Talk about Najee Harris all you want, but there's another big-time player on that offense, and his name is Deontay Johnson. What is his outlook for this upcoming season? You are a big Deontay Johnson supporter. You have been in the past. He is a fantastic wide receiver. He now does not have Ben Roethlisberger throwing to him. He's going to have Mitch Trubisky and or Kenny Pickett throwing to him. What is Deontay Johnson's outlook heading into 2022?
I don't think it matters who's throwing him the football. Big Ben wasn't good. Like we talk about Big Ben like he was in the prime of his career. Big Ben has not been good for the past 2 or 3 seasons. I think the improved offensive line play is huge. You guys brought it up. They did address the offensive line. Mitchell Trubisky is a more mobile quarterback than Big Ben. It'll allow the receivers to have more time to get open. I think that's a huge help to Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, and some of those guys. Whether it ends up being Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky, they're both they're able to move more freely than Big Ben. I think the receiving core for Pittsburgh is about what they were last year. I don't see in it a huge shift. I think you lose a little bit in the area of the smarts of Big Ben, the experience of Big Ben, right? You lose that part of it. but you gain back the athleticism of the younger guys that can move around and extend plays and allow these guys to get open. I think Deontay Johnson is a top 10 wide receiver. I've always thought he's been a top 10 wide receiver talent, and I don't think that changes this year. He's going to be a huge target share. They are going to be behind. They're still not really that great of a football team, in my opinion. They're going to have to play from behind. He's going to get a lot of targets and top 10.
Hell, Mitch Trubisky made Taylor Gabriel look good.
And I'm a Mitch Trubisky believer in the right system. Like, protect him like some of the other quarterbacks get protected in this league. And I'm not saying he can be great, but he can win some football games.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson is a very special wide receiver, and I think he's going to have a great year, possibly a top 10, possibly top 12 receiver in this league next year, or in fantasy next year. Let's move on to the Cleveland Browns here. We got to start rolling here. The Cleveland Browns, a lot has happened and a lot has changed within this offense this past offseason, obviously bringing in Deshaun Watson. I didn't have this question on the doc, and I'm going to just throw it up. And whoever wants to slam dunk this one home, I just want to see where it goes. We talk about Deshaun Watson. The reports came out yesterday where he had a settlement with 20 of the 24 victims, and we're getting closer and closer, I feel like, to a decision on whether Deshaun Watson plays in 2022 or not, or whether it's maybe an 8-game suspension or whatever. What do you do with Deshaun Watson in redraft leagues this year? Are you drafting him high? Where are you taking him? What are your expectations? What's the process like assessing Deshaun Watson's fantasy output this season?
Does he have an 80? What's his ADP at right now? Is he seeing it? I mean, because
Kind
that's the
of
real
the
question. I
same
mean,
I don't even
situation
think
last
it
year.
matters. I don't even think it matters.
Right
I
now,
think it's simple.
Deshaun, he's QB 13 going in
I think
the
it's simple.
103rd.
If you're drafting before the decision comes down, you don't touch Deshaun Watson. In a redraft league, there's no point in drafting Deshaun Watson if the decision has not come down. Once the decision comes down, if it is less than a year, less than the full season, that's when the dilemma comes in. But until then, you're just staying away. And if you're doing redraft leagues and you're drafting right now, go somewhere else because you should not be drafting right now.
Well, so
Right.
What's the dilemma though? What is the dilemma when if it comes down as an 8-game suspension? What is your dilemma and how are you taking it?
Can you
Not
sustain
before
8
round
games?
11.
Can you sustain 8 games? Are you a good enough evaluator of talent to sustain that many games? But you also got to remember, this is a guy that hasn't played football in a year. Like, there's going to be some growing pains. And if it's week 11, if say he gets suspended 8 games, and I don't know when their bye week is, maybe their bye week's week 9, who knows? If you're coming in week 10, 11, the fantasy season's almost over. Yeah. Like, are you going to ride with Deshaun Watson going into your fantasy playoffs week 1, knowing that he's only had 2 games under his belt and he hasn't played in a year and a half? No way. Like, I lean on the side of just staying away, but if there's some miracle, he's only suspended for 6 or for 4, or they say there's no suspension, then it becomes a different question. But as of right now, based on all the information we have, it shouldn't even be a discussion.
I might be on. I don't like. I understand the fact that, and you brought up you riding with him towards the playoffs if he only has 2 games under his belt. I actually look at that in the opposite way of you have all that time before your fantasy playoffs, and you have to make a decision on a quarterback. And if you're drafting Deshaun Watson in the 11th round or the 10th round, who are you drafting? Are you drafting a quarterback before that? Because if you're drafting a quarterback before Deshaun Watson, it's either, but you say, of course, but it's either Stafford, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts. You're not going to really bench any of those other quarterbacks for Deshaun Watson, though, right? Are you like, we talk about how?
So are you advocating Are you advocating to not draft him? Or are you saying like,
no? What I'm saying is my concern. You said your concern is more of the fact that it's you're not going to want to start him with 2 games under his belt heading towards the playoffs. I don't know if I'd want to even. I guess I'll say that if he suspended 8 games, I'm not drafting Deshaun Watson, right? Because of the fact that if you're drafting a quarterback, I know what you're saying. I'm saying I'm looking at it in a completely different way of not just so much the fact that it's towards the playoffs that you're concerned. It's getting to the playoffs is the concern.
You're not using. Wait. First of all, you're not using 2 of your top 11 picks on quarterbacks in a one quarterback.
That's what I'm saying.
So you're saying drafting Matt Stafford or one of those guys first. You wouldn't be if you're taking Deshaun Watson. You're taking him first.
That's what I'm trying to say here, because if you're taking Deshaun Watson first and he's suspended 8 games, you're looking at 8 games of a season, either streaming quarterbacks or rolling out with Kirk Cousins, Trey Lance, Tua, Justin Fields, guys like that. And I don't know if I'd want to do that. And that's why I am coming to the conclusion of not drafting Deshaun Watson if he's suspended 8 or more games. It is agreeing with you, but I was giving a different perspective of, you brought up the fact that it's close to the playoffs, not starting him 2 games under his belt. I'm talking about you have to get to the playoffs first, and you're not going to get to the playoffs streaming a quarterback like a Kirk Cousins or Tua or anything like that.
Kirk Cousins is a top quarterback every year.
Let's settle down.
I like Cousins.
Kirk Cousins is a borderline quarterback 1 every year. What are you talking about?
He'll have his doozies.
He'll
have his doozies, but he'll lay those 30, 38 games.
The problem is you have a huge drop-off after Matt Stafford to the next group of quarterbacks in most people's eyes. But the quarterbacks that are being drafted after Deshaun Watson are Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins. Why can't those guys be fantasy relevant? Why can't Matt Ryan be fantasy relevant in Indianapolis? Maybe Jameis Winston gets back to being fantasy relevant. Like, you're not looking at – you're talking about streaming quarterbacks. But you can play some of those guys every week. It's not a streaming situation. They're just not quarterback 1s. And quarterback 1s or quarterback 2 does not mean a streamer. Like, we can't say quarterback 14, oh no, we got to find a streaming quarterback every week. No, he's just outside the top 12. So taking Deshaun Watson doesn't mean that you have to not make the playoffs because you have Kirk Cousins. Like, you can start Kirk Cousins every single week, and you're probably going to have a pretty good team if you didn't draft a quarterback till then, because you got a bunch of good receivers and good running backs.
See, this is where I wanted to get in the conversation. This is where I was
Your dilemma is you took Deshaun Watson now in round 11. Now here comes round 12 and 13, and hey, you know what? Let me just go ahead and get some insurance and draft Kirk Cousins too. So your first 10 picks were all wide receivers, running backs, tight ends. So you probably got a good solid team. Kirk Cousins is your quarterback.
So if you're considering...
Let me finish. Now it's week 8. Deshaun Watson is back. You're not going to play him first week, or I guess week 9. Weeks 9 and 10, you bench him to see what he's got. Say he's done okay, and in week 10 or 11, he balls out. Then he has a dud. It's week 12. Now you have to make the decision. Have you seen enough to play Deshaun Watson over Kirk Cousins, who you know what you're going to get with? I'm saying that's tough to do, and I don't know if I would trust that, so I lean on just not drafting him at all.
I haven't chimed in here. I'll say this real quick. There's no chance in hell I'm drafting Deshaun Watson. He didn't play football at all last year. He hasn't played football halfway through this year. I don't know what the heck I'm getting here. Redraft league, piss off. Going somewhere else.
It's pretty simple.
It's fair. That's fair. And that's why I wanted to discuss it, because there are people that are out there that are probably considering whether or not taking Deshaun Watson in a redraft.
His ADP is saying that.
And if you do that, I was getting at what the quarterback should be if you are doing that to get you to week 8, if that is the earliest that he is back.
Who finished?
I'm a believer in not drafting quarterbacks. So there's guys there I would still take. I would take Justin Fields, to be honest. I don't mind Justin Fields. I'm gonna be honest. I don't mind Jameis Winston. You know, I'm a big believer in one young quarterback this year, and I think he's going to take a huge step in year 2, and that's Zach Wilson. I am not afraid to wait and try my luck on those type of quarterbacks. I'm not.
And we all know that AJ's favorite quarterback is sitting there as the QB 24 in Washington in Carson Wentz. So if you draft Deshaun Watson,
never take.
I mean,
who finishes with more fantasy points?
Deshaun Watson,
so I was really Baker Mayfield.
Angry about that. Well, I mean, we only know if Baker Mayfield's going to play football.
Right. We don't know if
Deshaun Watson's going to play football.
That's why the question's been asked.
Yeah, I was like, that's actually. Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
So Baker Mayfield will be the quarterback of the Panthers.
Jimmy G might be the quarterback of the Panthers.
Jimmy G's.
I might be the quarterback of the Panthers, but let's move on.
I'll take Vinny over both those guys.
I got a hell of an arm, man. I'm like that. I'm like Uncle Rico, baby. Let's go. Okay. So AJ, real quick though, without Watson, what is the value of the receivers in Cleveland? Obviously, you got Amari Cooper, no more Jarvis Landry. What's the value of the pass catching weapons in Cleveland if there is no Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, it kind of worries me a lot. It almost seems like a brand new receiving core in Cleveland with brand new quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett, who's only ever been decent. I mean, you look at Amari Cooper as your number one, and even that, you're probably having him as your RB2. I'm sorry, your wide receiver 2, or trying to get him as a flex. In the last couple of years, you've watched his fantasy output decline, and I think that's going to happen again, especially if you don't have a Deshaun Watson in there. So David Bell's a rookie. You don't know what to trust there. Donovan Peoples-Jones has only been given a handful of attempts, and then you're looking at a Jakeem Grant who is basically a return guy. So, you always look for your number one receivers on a team and know that they're going to get some fantasy value. But, I mean, there's just receivers so deep. You can go so many other places. And if there's no Watson in this team for even the 8 games, I'm probably staying far away from any of these receivers.
Aaron, are you on board with that? I know you like Amari Cooper as a obviously former Cowboy. You like him a little bit, but are you on board with what AJ said?
Nope.
More or less, yeah.
Great.
More or less. I mean, most of what he said, I agree with. I'm not going to argue every single point. I think for the most part, it was what I agree with.
I think it is hard to gauge anyone on this Cleveland Browns roster or offense unless your name is Nick Chubb or Dylan's favorite player, Kareem Hunt.
I mean, all right, Amari Cooper is going to get his because he's the best receiver there. So
yeah, that's fair.
It don't matter who throws the football. It doesn't matter. It could be Jacoby Brissett. It could be Dylan's grandmother. It really doesn't matter.
Whoa.
They're going to throw to Amari Cooper because on the other side, there's not very much talent. Donovan Peoples-Jones, who know David Bell, they said they like, but Amari Cooper is the best route runner. He's going to get his targets. He'll have a good year, regardless of who's at quarterback. The game changes if Deshaun Watson's there. That's all.
Kevin Hogan.
So basically, it's the same thing as what Cleveland has been in the past. It's that one number one receiver, whether it be Jarvis Landry or Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. That's it until Deshaun Watson comes back, and at that point, it's a mess. Baltimore, final team that we are talking about tonight. I only got one question. We talked a little bit about J.K. Dobbins earlier. We talked about Lamar earlier. But this offense as a whole, AJ, you brought up on last week's show, and if you missed it, talked about Rashad Bateman having very good value at his ADP. But we all know this offense runs through Lamar Jackson, heavily targets Mark Andrews. Aaron, what is the value of the wide receivers as a whole in Baltimore outside of Rashad Bateman? And really, what's his value as well? Because, again, it's Lamar running. It's Mark Andrews. It's J.K. Dobbins. It's really that's heavy of their offense. So what's the value of these pass-catching weapons in Baltimore?
I think there's more value than most people think. Like, we're not talking about wide receivers that don't get the ball thrown to them. I mean, Hollywood Brown had 146 targets last year. He had 91 catches. Is that not value? I mean, can 91 catches be turned into 1,200 yards? Absolutely. Can 900 catches be turned into 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns? Absolutely. I think there's value there. I think it's overstated that there's no value at the Baltimore wide receiver position because no wide receiver has stood out to what people would like there to be. So there's going to be 150 targets that spread around. It's going to go to somebody. Maybe another more to tight ends. Maybe there's some more to Mark Andrews, but I think Rashad Bateman is going to be the recipient of most of them. Maybe Dylan's favorite guy, Devin Duvernay. But Bateman had 68 targets of his own last year. He had 500 yards on his own last year. If Bateman saw another 70, 80 targets from what he saw last year, is that not going to then boost him up to over 1,000 yards? And I think he's much more of a touchdown threat with his bigger body, bigger frame in the red zone. I think they look to him a little bit more this year in the red zone with Lamar playing a full season. I don't know. I think their wide receiver outlook is fine. There's just not many of them there. So You look at Rashad Bateman and you say that's a player that you might get a steal for, especially where he's being drafted, which I know is not it's not very high. Like he's being disrespected across the board because of the offense he plays in. And there's guys that I would much rather have, or I'd much rather have him than guys like honestly, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, Michael Thomas for sure. Get him, Darnell Mooney. Not excited about that. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm telling, like, these are guys that I feel like Rashad Bateman can have better years than, and he's being drafted significantly further down than they are. So he's right next to Treylon Burks, AJ.
Yeah, that's that
Brown 2.0 or whatever.
That's the biggest thing with the pass catchers not named Mark Andrews in that Baltimore Ravens offense is you're going to get value with whatever pick you do have, whether you do want to take a shot on Dylan's guy, Devin Duvernay, or you take a shot on Rashad Bateman. You're going to get that value with a pass catcher in Baltimore because, like you said, Aaron, they are being disrespected because the scheme that they run with Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. Get your value with your Baltimore Ravens wide receivers. That does it for our AFC North team by team coverage. It's been fun, gentlemen. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time for Good Morning Sac City.
Should I bring
AJ?
pancakes?
No, that's for fantasy football season during the regular season. We do not bring pigskins and pancakes out just yet. But AJ,
pigskins.
Yeah, AJ, do us a favor and tell the beautiful people where they can follow us at.
It goes without saying that you can follow this lovely, wonderful morning crew at Sac City Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Head on over, check us out. Check out the wonderful content, Vinny with the graphics, Aaron with the tickety talks, Aaron with the YouTubes, Aaron with the no. Check us out, the best content on the interwebs at Sac City Pod, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. We appreciate all the love. Come join the city. Sac City Pod. Population. One more.
I love it. I love it. Again, we'll be back again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time, right here on YouTube at the Sac City Pod. Please drop your reviews, drop your comments, drop your thoughts and everything. Let us know what you think of the show. For your boy AJ Johnson, for my best friend Aaron Mukes, for good old Dylan Kearns, I am me. We will see you tomorrow.
Peace out.
Bye.